They were America's favorite kids until Hollywood hit puberty harder than they did. One became a diplomat, another disappeared to a tiny village in France, and one changed child actor laws forever. So what really happened after the cameras stopped rolling, trust me, these stories are stranger, sadder, and far more unbelievable than anything Hollywood ever put on screen. Number 1, Brandon DeWilde. Shane come back. With just 4 heartbreaking words in the 1953 classic, Shane Brandon DeWilde became one of the most unforgettable child actors in Hollywood history. At only 11 years old, his emotional performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, making him one of the youngest nominees ever. America adored him, critics praised him, and for a while it looked like Brandon had discovered the secret formula every child star dreams of growing up in Hollywood without completely losing his mind. Unlike many young actors who disappeared after one big hit, Brandon kept moving forward. He starred alongside Paul Newman in HUD 1963, appeared in popular television shows, and slowly built a respectable adult career. He wasn't chasing cheap nostalgia or trying to relive his childhood fame. In fact, Brandon seemed to be doing something almost supernatural in Hollywood, maturing gracefully. Somewhere studio executives were probably taking notes and wondering if they'd finally found the world's first instruction manual for surviving child stardom. But fate had other plans. In July 1972, while traveling near Denver to appear in a stage production, Brandon's car collided with a truck, ending his life at just 30 years old. There were no scandals, no tabloid disasters, and no tragic downward spiral, just a cruel twist of fate that cut short a promising future. The little boy who once begged Shane to return never got the chance to finish writing his own Hollywood comeback story, leaving behind one of cinema's most bittersweet legacies. Number 2, Claude Jarman Jr. Most child stars spend decades trying to hold on to the magic they found as kids. Claude Jarman Jr. did the exact opposite. He walked away while the world still wanted more. At just 12 years old, he became an overnight sensation in The Yearling, 1946, starring alongside Gregory Peck and Jane Wyman. His heartfelt performance earned him a special Juvenile Academy Award and turned him into one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. Films like High Barbaree and Intruder in the Dust soon followed, and it seemed obvious that a long movie career was waiting for him. But Claude saw something many others didn't. Hollywood could make you a star one year and forget your name the next. Instead of chasing fame forever, he returned to Tennessee, finished high school, attended Vanderbilt University, and served in the U.S. Navy. Honestly, while everyone else was fighting for auditions, Claude was busy collecting life experiences and probably getting a lot more sleep than most actors in Los Angeles. His story didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. Years later, he returned to the film world from a different angle, serving as the executive director of the San Francisco International Film Festival and helping shape the industry behind the scenes. Claude Jarman Jr. passed away in 2025 at the age of 90, leaving behind a legacy built not on scandal or heartbreak, but on wisdom. In a town obsessed with staying famous, he proved that sometimes the happiest ending comes from knowing exactly when to leave the stage. Number 3, Deanna Durbin. Before Hollywood learned how to turn superheroes into billion-dollar franchises, it had Deanna Durbin. Born in Canada, the young singer became an overnight sensation with Three Smart Girls, 1936, a film so successful that many believe it helped rescue Universal Studios from financial disaster. Hits like 100 Men and a Girl, Mad About Music, and First Love made her one of the biggest stars in America. By the time she was 21, she was the second highest-paid woman in the nation, behind only Bette Davis. Not bad for a teenager whose voice was apparently more valuable than half of Hollywood combined. But fame wasn't the fairy tale everyone imagined. As Deanna grew older, she grew tired of playing the same sweet, innocent girl, while studio executives tried to freeze time. She wanted a normal life. Hollywood wanted a permanent version of America's sweetheart. In 1948, after starring in For the Love of Mary, her final movie, she shocked the industry by retiring at just 27. No scandals, no explosive interviews, no dramatic farewell. She simply walked away while she was still on top. After marrying French producer Charles David, Deanna settled in a quiet village near Paris and spent the next 6 decades far from cameras and red carpets. She turned down reunion shows, rejected lucrative comeback offers, and rarely gave interviews. When people asked why she left, her answer was simple: she was never truly happy in Hollywood. In a town where everyone dreams of a comeback, Deanna Durbin delivered the greatest plot twist of all. She escaped and never looked back. Number 4, Scotty Beckett. With his mischievous grin, sideways cap, and effortless charm, Scotty Beckett looked like the kid Hollywood had been waiting for. He first won over audiences in the Our Gang comedies before moving into bigger productions, playing younger versions of legends like Spencer Tracy and Al Jolson. By the 1940s, Scotty was everywhere. Unlike many child actors who vanished overnight, he seemed to have cracked the secret code for surviving fame. For a while, it looked like Hollywood had finally found a child star who could actually grow up on screen without causing studio executives to panic. But life off camera was telling a different story. When Scotty was just 14, his father passed away, and the loss hit him hard. The cheerful boy America loved slowly disappeared behind grief, alcohol, and prescription pills. Arrests followed, marriages collapsed, and the promising young actor who once lit up movie screens became a regular subject for tabloids. Hollywood, as usual, moved on faster than a producer canceling a sequel that didn't make enough money. By the late 1960s, Scotty's career had all but vanished. After suffering a mysterious beating, he checked into a nursing home in Los Angeles, hoping to recover and start over. Tragically, only 2 days later, he died from a barbiturate overdose at just 38 years old. The boy who once seemed destined to beat the odds became another heartbreaking reminder that growing up in Hollywood can be far more dangerous than anyone ever imagines. Sometimes the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. Number 5, Bobby Driscoll. Before Mickey Mouse became a global empire, Disney had Bobby Driscoll, the studio's very first child superstar. He stole hearts in Song of the South, 1946, thrilled audiences in Treasure Island, 1950, and became immortal as the voice and face model for Peter Pan in 1953. At just 12 years old, Bobby even received a special Juvenile Academy Award. For a brief moment, he wasn't simply a child actor. He was Disney's golden ticket. If there had been Disney Plus back then, Bobby probably would have had his own franchise and a line of collectible lunchboxes. But Hollywood has one enemy that no amount of talent can defeat: growing up. As Bobby entered his teenage years, acne replaced his baby-faced charm, and the industry that once adored him suddenly lost interest. Disney quietly ended his contract, and the boy who once flew through Neverland found himself grounded in the harsh reality of adulthood. The phone stopped ringing, the offers disappeared, and fame became a distant memory far too quickly. Desperate to find his place again, Bobby struggled with addiction and drifted far from the world that once celebrated him. In 1968, a body was discovered in an abandoned New York tenement, buried without a name or recognition. 2 years later, fingerprints confirmed the heartbreaking truth: it was Bobby Driscoll, dead at only 31. The child who taught generations to believe in never growing up became one of Hollywood's most painful reminders that sometimes the magic ends long before the story is supposed to. Number 6. Margaret O'Brien. In the 1940s, if Hollywood needed tears, charm, and enough talent to outshine grown adults, there was only one name to call Margaret O'Brien. She became a sensation in films like Journey for Margaret, 1942, Meet Me in St. Louis, 1944, alongside Judy Garland, and The Secret Garden, 1949. At just 7 years old, she won a special Juvenile Academy Award, proving that being tiny didn't stop her from stealing every single scene. Honestly, directors probably loved her and feared her at the same time. Imagine getting out-acted by someone who still needed help reaching the kitchen counter. But Hollywood has a strange habit of loving children and having absolutely no idea what to do once they become teenagers. As Margaret grew older, the adorable, tearful roles that made her famous slowly disappeared. The industry wanted the little girl to stay little forever, and when that became impossible, the spotlight began to move on. Unlike so many former child stars, however, Margaret refused to chase a version of fame that no longer existed. Instead, she chose something far more radical, a normal life. She stepped away from the pressure built a family and avoided the scandals that consumed so many of her peers. While others made headlines for all the wrong reasons, Margaret occasionally returned to classic film festivals with grace and gratitude, still beloved by fans decades later. In a town where everyone is desperate for one more close-up, Margaret O'Brien proved that sometimes the happiest ending begins when the cameras finally stop rolling. Number 7. Freddie Bartholomew. In the 1930s, Freddie Bartholomew was the definition of a child superstar. With his charming British accent and natural talent, he won audiences over in classics like David Copperfield, 1935, Little Lord Fauntleroy, 1936, and Captains Courageous, 1937, alongside Spencer Tracy. At the peak of his fame, he earned an astonishing $2,500 a week, making him one of the highest-paid children in the world. If Hollywood had social media back then, Freddie probably would have crashed the servers with fan letters alone. But his biggest battles happened far away from movie cameras. After he became famous, his estranged parents suddenly returned and fought bitter legal wars over custody and his fortune. Years of court cases drained much of the money he had earned. While Hollywood faced its usual problem, children eventually grow up. By the time Freddie reached his teenage years, MGM quietly dropped him, and the magical image that made him a star no longer fit the industry's plans. Unlike many former child actors, Freddie refused to let fame define the rest of his life. He served in the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II, before building a completely new career in television advertising. Starting from the bottom, he eventually became a successful executive and award-winning commercial director. When he passed away in 1992, many people around him never realized that the quiet businessman they knew had once been one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. In a town obsessed with staying famous forever, Freddie Bartholomew discovered something far more valuable, a life that actually belonged to him. Number 8. Jackie Coogan. Long before Shirley Temple captured America's heart, Jackie Coogan was already Hollywood's biggest little star. At just 7 years old, Charlie Chaplin cast him in The Kid, 1921, and overnight Jackie became an international sensation. His face appeared on toys, lunchboxes, peanut butter jars, and just about everything else money could buy. By the age of 10, he had earned more than $4 million, an unbelievable fortune at the time. If child stardom had a founding father, Jackie Coogan was it. But the greatest shock of his life came years later. When Jackie turned 21, he expected to inherit the fortune he had worked for since childhood. Instead, he discovered that his mother and stepfather had spent nearly all of it on mansions, jewelry, and luxury cars. Their excuse was almost impossible to believe. They claimed Jackie had simply been enjoying himself while they did the real work. Talk about the worst family business partnership in Hollywood history. The scandal outraged the public and pushed Jackie into a legal battle that would change the industry forever. Although he recovered only a fraction of his money, his lawsuit led to the creation of the Coogan Law, requiring child actors' earnings to be legally protected. Jackie continued acting throughout his life and introduced himself to a new generation as Uncle Fester in The Addams Family. When he died in 1984, his legacy extended far beyond fame. He wasn't just Hollywood's first child superstar, he was the reason countless young performers would never lose everything the way he did. Number 9. Shirley Temple. Before Hollywood had superheroes, it had Shirley Temple. During the Great Depression, her curly hair, bright smile, and unforgettable dance routines gave millions of Americans a reason to smile. Films like Bright Eyes, 1934, Curly Top, 1935, and Heidi, 1937, made her the biggest child star the world had ever seen. By the age of 6, she was earning $50,000 per movie, selling everything from dolls to breakfast cereals. Honestly, Shirley wasn't just an actress. She was basically a one-girl economic recovery plan for Hollywood. But even America's favorite little girl couldn't escape Hollywood's oldest problem: children grow up. By her early teens, audiences wanted the adorable Shirley they remembered, not the young woman she was becoming. Her studio eventually dropped her, and several teenage roles failed to recreate the magic that once filled theaters. For many child stars, that would have been the beginning of a heartbreaking downfall. Instead, Shirley decided to write an entirely different ending. She retired from acting at just 22, raised a family, and later stepped into politics and diplomacy. She served as a U.S. representative to the United Nations and became ambassador to both Ghana and Czechoslovakia, earning respect far beyond the entertainment world. When asked about a career in acting, she famously joked, "Don't." In the end, Shirley Temple accomplished something even rarer than lifelong fame. She proved that leaving Hollywood behind didn't mean the story was over. In her case, it was only the beginning. Number 10. Tommy Rettig. In the 1950s, millions of Americans knew Tommy Rettig as Jeff Miller, the bright-eyed farm boy from Lassie. Week after week, audiences watched him and television's most famous collie save the day, turning Tommy into one of the biggest child stars of his generation. Before Lassie, he had already appeared in films like The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T and River of No Return, alongside Marilyn Monroe. To the outside world, Tommy was living every kid's dream. But behind the cameras, he felt something very different. Fame was starting to feel more like a full-time job than an adventure. At just 14 years old, Tommy shocked producers by asking to leave the show. He didn't want to spend his entire childhood growing up in front of millions of viewers. Unfortunately, Hollywood had a hard time seeing him as anything other than the boy from Lassie. Serious adult roles never came, and his life soon hit a rough patch, including drug-related arrests and public struggles that seemed to confirm every terrible stereotype about former child stars. Apparently, escaping a famous TV dog was easier than escaping Hollywood itself. But Tommy refused to let that be the end of his story. In one of the most unexpected career changes imaginable, he entered the rapidly growing world of computers and database programming. He became a respected software developer, technology writer, and advocate for open-source systems long before most people even knew what a database was. When he passed away in 1996 at the age of 54, Tommy Rettig left behind something many child stars never find: a second act that belonged entirely to him, with no script and no cameras required. Number 11. Baby Peggy. Long before Shirley Temple became America's sweetheart, baby Peggy was already one of the biggest stars in America. Born Diana Sarah Carey, she appeared in more than 150 short films and classics like The Darling of New York, 1923, Captain January, 1924, and Helen's Babies, 1924. By age 5, she was earning an incredible $1.5 million a year and selling everything from toys to milk products. In the silent film era, she wasn't just a child actress, she was an entire industry wrapped up in one tiny girl. But behind the fame was a childhood few people would envy. Baby Peggy worked exhausting schedules, sometimes filming 6 days a week, and performing dangerous stunts without protection. To stop her from crying on set, adults reportedly used harsh methods that would never be accepted today. Worse still, the fortune she earned vanished after her father made poor investments and feuded with producers, destroying her career almost overnight. By the age of 7, Hollywood had moved on, and the family was left struggling financially, forcing her into vaudeville performances just to survive. Yet baby Peggy refused to become another forgotten tragedy. Reinventing herself as Diana Sarah Carey, she built a new life as an author, film historian, and outspoken advocate for child actors' rights. She spent decades preserving the legacy of silent cinema and sharing the truth about the hidden costs of child stardom. Living to the remarkable age of 101, she proved that surviving Hollywood and telling your own story can sometimes be the greatest victory of all. Number 12, Kevin Corcoran. In the 1950s, Disney had a secret weapon, and his name was Kevin Corcoran. Nicknamed Moochie, the freckle-faced troublemaker stole America's heart in classics like Old Yeller, 1957, The Shaggy Dog, 1959, Swiss Family Robinson, 1960, and Pollyanna, 1960. Walt Disney adored him, casting him again and again as the mischievous but lovable all-American kid. For a while, Kevin wasn't just acting in Disney movies, he practically lived at the studio. If Mickey Mouse had a little brother, it probably would have been Moochie. But Kevin understood something that many child stars learned far too late. Hollywood loves children, but it has absolutely no idea what to do once they become adults. Instead of desperately chasing leading roles, he made a bold decision. He went to college, studied theater arts at California State University, and quietly stepped behind the camera. While other former child stars fought to stay in the spotlight, Kevin was busy building a career that didn't depend on anyone remembering his old movies. That decision paid off. Kevin became a successful assistant director and producer, working on popular television shows like Murder, She Wrote, Baywatch, and Quantum Leap. He spent decades shaping Hollywood from behind the scenes, proving that a second act can sometimes be even better than the first. When cancer claimed his life in 2015, at the age of 66, Kevin left behind a legacy few child actors ever achieve, not just surviving Hollywood, but outsmarting it completely. Number 13, John Provost. Say the name Timmy, and most Americans instantly think of Lassie. From 1957 to 1964, John Provost played Timmy Martin the farm boy, with television's most famous collie. Fan mail poured in by the thousands every week, and the show turned him into one of the most recognizable child stars in America. Ironically, the classic line, "Timmy's in the well," was never actually spoken on the series, but it followed John for the rest of his life. That's Hollywood for you. Sometimes your biggest catchphrase isn't even real. Unlike many young actors, John and his family understood that fame doesn't last forever. At just 14, he chose to leave Lassie on his own terms. The writers sent Timmy and his family to Australia, giving the character a peaceful goodbye. After a few smaller acting roles, John realized that Hollywood had little interest in the adult version of America's favorite farm boy. Instead of fighting to stay famous, he decided to build a different future. John attended college, worked in real estate, and raised a family far from the chaos of show business. Years later, he embraced his television legacy by attending fan events and publishing his memoir, Timmy's in the Well, a playful joke about the line everyone remembers, but nobody actually heard. Today, John Provost remains one of Hollywood's rare success stories, a former child star who knew exactly when to leave the spotlight and never regretted the decision. Number 14, Bonita Granville. While most child stars built their careers playing sweet little angels, Bonita Granville made a name for herself by being absolutely terrifying. At just 13 years old, she stunned audiences as the manipulative Mary Tilford in These Three 1936, earning an Academy Award nomination for a performance so convincing that moviegoers probably wanted to ground her for life. She later traded villainy for adventure, becoming the big-screen Nancy Drew in 4 popular films, proving she could solve mysteries just as well as she created drama. In Hollywood, that's called range. But like many young stars, Bonita eventually discovered that growing up changes everything. By the 1940s, the major roles became smaller with appearances in films like Now Voyager and Hitler's Children. The spotlight slowly faded, and many expected her story to end like so many others, another talented child actress lost to Hollywood history. Apparently, though, Bonita had read a completely different script. In 1947, she married producer and oil heir Jack Rather and reinvented herself as a businesswoman and entertainment executive. Together, they helped build a media empire that included producing Lassie and investing in hotels, television, and theme parks. By the time she passed away in 1988, Bonita Granville wasn't remembered only as a former child star. She was a woman who had gone from acting in Hollywood to quietly helping run it. And honestly, that's one plot twist even Nancy Drew might not have seen coming. Number 15, Beverly Washburn. Not every child star ends with a scandal, a meltdown, or a tragic headline. Beverly Washburn proved that sometimes the biggest plot twist is simply surviving Hollywood. During the 1950s, her expressive eyes and emotional performances made her one of the industry's most reliable young actresses. She appeared in classics like Old Yeller 1957, The Lone Ranger, and dozens of popular television shows. Directors loved her because she could cry on command, although let's be honest, in old Hollywood, that was practically considered a superpower. While many of her peers struggled to transition into adulthood, Beverly managed something incredibly rare. She kept working steadily as she grew older without chasing fame or becoming trapped by her childhood image. There were no scandals, no courtroom battles, and no dramatic tabloid stories. Instead, she quietly adapted to a changing industry and eventually stepped away from the spotlight on her own terms. In Hollywood, choosing peace over publicity might be the boldest career move of all. Rather than spending decades trying to relive her glory days, Beverly focused on family, personal happiness, and occasionally reconnecting with fans who still remembered her work. She later published her memoir, Real Tears, reflecting on her experiences without bitterness or sensationalism. Today, living in Las Vegas in her 80s, Beverly Washburn stands as one of Hollywood's rare success stories, not because she stayed famous forever, but because she built a life that mattered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Number 16, June Lockhart. Most child stars struggle to survive one generation in Hollywood. June Lockhart somehow survived them all. Born into a family of actors, she made her mark as a teenager in A Christmas Carol 1938, and later appeared in classics like Meet Me in St. Louis 1944. While many young performers faded as they grew older, June kept proving that talent doesn't come with an expiration date. Apparently, she discovered Hollywood's best-kept secret growing up is actually allowed. Her biggest success came on television. Millions of Americans knew her as Ruth Martin on Lassie during the 1950s and later as Dr. Maureen Robinson in Lost in Space. Warm, intelligent, and endlessly dependable, she became one of television's most beloved mothers. While other former child stars fought to stay in the spotlight, June simply evolved with the times, building a career that lasted for decades without ever losing the audience's affection. The most remarkable part of her story is what never happened. No scandals, no public breakdowns, and no desperate comebacks. She continued working, sharing stories from Hollywood's golden age, and attending fan events well into her later years. At nearly a century old, June Lockhart remained a living bridge between classic cinema and modern television. In a business famous for chewing up its young, she didn't just survive, she mastered the art of staying relevant while never losing herself along the way.